possibly the most important thing you can have when it comes to RC, other than the car itself, would be your tools. When it comes to RC, there are a lot of specialist tools out there that are specifically for RC, just like any other hobby would have specialist tools for it too. And they tend to work pretty well. Tools can mean a lot of things though. So in this video I'm going to go over all of the tools and miscellaneous kit that I happen to own and what they're for. This first major tool I didn't actually get from a hobby shop, but from Walmart for about 12 bucks. This small little electric screwdriver is really all the screwdriver you're ever really gonna need. I sometimes see people using very strong, full-size drills on their RC cars, and that's completely fine if you already have one. But spending upwards of $70 on a full-size power drill just for RC cars, unless they're giant 5th scales, is kind of foolish. Especially if you start to complain about stripping screw heads. A small, cheap screwdriver like this doesn't have the torque or speed to do that most of the time, so you don't really need to worry about that. Now these days, most racing rigs no longer use things like Phillips heads or flatheads anymore. They usually use hexes instead, and that's where this comes in. Many companies all make something similar to this, but a multi-hex set like this will save you so many headaches. They may seem a bit pricey on the outset. 40 bucks for a screwdriver can seem that way, but trust me when I say it's very much worth the investment. You can, however, end up buying one of these tool steps instead for a bit cheaper, and they'll perform very much the same function. It just will take up a bit more space. In fact, looking back, I might recommend one of these instead because they usually come with a nut driver as well. A nut driver like this can have the use of either removing the wheel, or in the case of this B6.2, removing the shocks from the top mount. Depending on the kit, they might have more uses, but those are generally what they're for. The last major thing you're going to want to keep in your toolkit will be a real good soldering iron. I've heard plenty of people say they aren't good at soldering only to see that they're using some crappy $2 soldering iron with lead-free solder, no flux, and without cleaning the tip with a wire brush like this. Any iron that has a base like this that allows you to adjust the temperature will work just fine. Don't waste your time or money on an iron that goes straight into the wall, or God forbid those butane irons. If you really want to splurge on a good soldering iron, get this Hakko soldering iron kit right here on AMain. There are a few other traditional tools that you might need as well, so I'm going to go over those a bit quickly. Some needle nose pliers for getting stripped screws out and other jerry rigging, some kind of wire strippers for stripping and cutting wire, Lexan scissors like this to help cut wires and anything else you might need to cut like zip ties or Lexan bodies, and of course an old dirty toothbrush and canned air to help clean your car after hard running on turf or dirt. Next up we have some tools that you can only really get from hobby shops and or tools specifically made for RC cars. First up we have this tiny little thing, a turnbuckle wrench. These usually come with most racing kits and allow you to both assemble the turnbuckles and camber links, but also allow you to adjust them as well. This camber gauge will help in adjusting your camber. All you really need to do is set it to your desired camber on the set, drop the car like this, and match the wheel's camber to the gauge as best as possible. The other part of your setup is going to be your ride height. You adjust this by adjusting the preload on your shocks and using a ride height gauge like this. Drop the car on a flat surface and slide the gauge under it and try to match the ride height of the car to the desired setting on the gauge front and back. The last main thing that has served me well for literally years has been this car stand. Simply put, working on your car while it's suspended in the air by a car stand is much easier. Not to mention if the car ever decides to run away from you. You'll be safe in the fact that the wheels will be in the air and won't be able to propel the car. There's also the benefit of this particular stand having a little hole for any and all hardware you happen to take off while working on it, so you don't lose them. It also has little holes on the sides that are perfect for holding shocks while you work on them as well. There are different RC tools I don't own, like this ball cup screw, sanding paddle for breaking in tires, body reamer, toe in and out gauge, shock holder, shock air remover, and many others. Now, all of these more specialized tools are more niche than anything else, and tend to be more expensive. So my advice would be to only get them when you're good enough for the benefit of these tools to actually be noticeable. I personally plan on grabbing myself one of these setup rids from Entity for my two-wheel drive buggy, as it serves more of an accurate way of measuring your camber and towing. Next up we have all the miscellaneous kit that you might need from race to practice to being bored at home. Solder, preferably flux-filled, double-sided tape for securing electronics, zip ties for securing wires and making sure everything looks nice and neat, electrical and or regular tape for things that zip ties won't fix, spare hardware for when you inevitably lose screws, spare shock and diff fluid in case you want to change your setup, and a lighter or heat gun for shrink tubing. Lastly, you're going to need something to carry all your stuff, and that's where a carrying case comes in. There are plenty of carrying cases out there for different scales and cars, so just pick the one that happens to suit you the best. Just make sure that when you get one to stay as organized as possible. This is one of those hobbies where people with OCD tend to succeed very well. I am not one of those people. In the end, you'll probably end up getting most of these tools as you need them. Contrary to what I said at the beginning of the video, a lot of these tools I do not own, but haven't really needed them. I just wanted to go over the things that would make life easier in RC, and I hope I did exactly that for you. If you can think of any useful tools I missed in the video, don't be afraid to post them in the comment section below. If you like what I do, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more. I'll see you later.